What's going on, everyone? So the Miami Heat are still shopping Jimmy Butler, and it's looking more and more likely like they're going to end up being stuck with Jimmy. It's kind of hard to see a path and what type of team would make a move to go get a Jimmy Butler. He wants the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns really want Jimmy Butler, but the Miami Heat just seem to have no interest in trading for Bradley Beal, which I get, right? A lot of risk. His contract, you're stuck with him if it doesn't work out. I do think that there are some arguments to be made on Miami taking a Bradley Beal. They want to remain competitive. He's a guy that would keep you competitive. Probably gets back to being a 25-5 guy, right? 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, maybe even back to a 35-5 guy. That's very real possibility. I know a lot of people think he's washed and just not the same guy. I don't think it's anything to do with that. I just think it's a terrible fit. Him and Devin Booker literally play the same position. They are the same player. Whichever guy you think is better, they're the same player. Right? They want to do the same things. Neither is skilled enough at the guard position or playmaking position to be a point guard. Neither is big enough to properly slot into the three. It's a redundancy there. If he doesn't have that redundancy, then I do think he can get back to being more of like a Washington Wizard type of guy. Also, you could argue, who would the Miami Heat get better than a Bradley Beal in a Jimmy Butler trade? Everyone's trying to fleece them. No one really wants to give up a real package, which you can't really blame them, right? What team wants to sell the farm for Jimmy Butler? Right? His age, he wants max, right? His injury history, does he take the regular season serious enough? There's a lot of questions in that realm, in that regard. So I said it a month ago now, that chances are Jimmy Butler is going to end up having to stay in Miami. He's probably going to be stuck there, and they're probably going to have to work it out. Could he maybe leave somewhere? But the only teams that have the money to sign him is the Brooklyn Nets. And unless the Nets end up getting somebody like a Giannis and then go and sign a Jimmy Butler, I just don't see a path where, that makes sense for the Nets or Jimmy or anybody. But DeMarcus Cousins, DeMarcus Cousins, recently had an interview, and he was just, shooting through some stuff, and he talked about, a team that he thinks makes a lot of sense for Jimmy Butler. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of like it. And that is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I know Jimmy Butler is a former Timberwolf, and that ended disastrously, right? He did an interview, all of that stuff. By guns, right? They also didn't have Anthony Edwards at that time. Right? That was when Karl Anthony Towns and they had Andrew Wiggins and, Jeff Teague and all those guys, right? It was a very different team. And Jimmy Butler was not a happy camper at that time. They were very young. They didn't have any of those dogs. They didn't have any of those Jimmy type of guys that really, that attitude, that persona that Jimmy likes. Well, you know who they have now that does? Anthony Edwards, right? What DeMarcus Cousins said was, hey, dogs need dogs, right? And I actually kind of agree with that, right? I mean, look, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're stuck. They are trapped either way. They're cooked. Yes, they've had some bright spots here and there, but for the most part, they're done. Anthony Edwards has essentially turned into a spot-up 3-and-D shooter, right? You kind of need to make some Hail Mary play. And I don't really hate the idea of a Jimmy Butler Hail Mary play. Right? Worst case scenario, Jimmy Butler just leaves and you clear, his $50 million contract. But if you can, package, a Dante DiVincenzo and a Julius Randle and then whatever other pieces you need to try to get that done, you probably have to work out a third team because, aprons, Timberwolves are a second apron team at Miami, right? It'd be complicated, it'd be really tough, but there's paths, right? The Knicks showing that there's paths in order to pull it off. If they could work something out to make that happen, right? Anthony Edwards and Jimmy Butler would be tough. And if they could make the playoffs, right? No one want to see Anthony Edwards and Jimmy Butler. And those two dogs, I just want to see it. Right? I just want to see the two of them on a team together. Either they try to kill each other because they're just two, bulls just going at it, or they fit beautifully and they're just a handful for the rest of the league, right? Could you imagine those two, right? I'd still have problems with shooting because Jimmy Butler isn't this lights-out three-point shooter, so your spacing is still a bit of a concern. But, Jimmy Butler, you're probably smaller, but, who cares? Stretch it out, right? You might as well, right? Do you do something like Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Jimmy Butler, Jaden McDaniels, and, Rudy Gobert, unless you can convince Miami to take Rudy Gobert somehow, which I don't see them doing. But no, is there a way to keep Naz Reid and maybe you go with like Naz Reid or something? I mean, it'd be really tough to get to that, but it's not like impossible. Like again, Minnesota could get there. Minnesota could make it happen. It's just I don't think that they would. I also don't know if Jimmy would want to go there. But, like, it does have a nice ring to it, at least to me, right? Jimmy Butler and Anthony Edwards, those two guys, those two dogs just going at it, right? And, like, you have, like, just these two pit bulls every night coming at you, like, playoffs. Man, I would love to see that. Like, I don't care if they're tiny. I don't care if they lack shooting. You're going to have to beat them. Hey, Jimmy's done more with less than any star in the league. Imagine if you had a guy like Anthony Edwards, and if you could keep some of these other key pieces and stuff and maybe make something work there. I don't know how you say no to that. Like, honestly, like I think that's something that if you're the Wolves, I think you at least kick the tire on it, right? Like, what would it take? What would you do? Again, I don't think that they would do it, but I just, like, when DeMarcus Cousins said that, because it was like Minnesota wasn't even in my mind. Right, for a lot of the same reasons that I mentioned in this video. One, it's tough; it'd be a real hurdle to try to get over. Two, it's like that relationship went so bad last time. But again, it's a very different circumstance. Again, they didn't have an Anthony Edwards and that just dog in him. That's just like they didn't have a Jimmy type of player, right? They now have a Jimmy type of player. They have a guy that Jimmy, like the kind of guys that Jimmy loves, right? Guy that just get after it, talk to you the whole time. I could see the two of them just going at it in practice, right? Like you have to have a reality show at that point with those two, right? Like I need cameras on those two at all times, just watching those two. Like I said, those two bulls just going at it. I think it'd be a lot of fun, but. Again, it's just kind of a thought. It was just kind of something. And I was like, you know what, let's talk about it. Because I'd love to see kind of a path in order to do that. How do you do that without fleecing your entire roster, right? That's the hard part. But, man, it's like if you did do it, right, like, if it doesn't work, Jimmy probably just leaves in the offseason anyway. You just kind of let it go. I mean, it would suck to... if you lost a key piece or two along the way in order to do so, but it's just like, again, like, what's the alternative? You're a play-in team and you lose in the first round, or you don't make the playoffs entirely, right? Like, again, they jumped the gun with the Karl-Anthony Towns. Again, I'm not against them trading Karl-Anthony Towns. It's just they didn't need to do it when they did it, and they should have waited to see what does this team look like. They were just in the conference finals. You go from being in the conference finals to now you might not even make the playoffs, all because of one decision. It's just, I don't know. So, like, what do? I think you just take a splash. And Minnesota keeps trying to jump into this deep end of the pool. Well, jump in and let's see if you sink or swim this time. Take a chance on Jimmy. But obviously Jimmy would have to want to go there. But I think you take the flyer, right? But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like the idea? Do you hate the idea? You kind of mixed in the middle on the idea? However you feel, love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out as we enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.